From the heyday of the play-to-earn boom to today's recalibration, Web3 gaming has been going through a bumpy ride. What looked like a paradigm shift in 2021, and I know because I did tons of recordings on this topic back in 2021, now raises some significant questions. Are there structural, economic, or trust challenges holding back Web3 gaming? What does digital ownership look like in a player's daily experience? We want to find out why that matters. And what is unique about Southeast Asia that might make it a leading region for Web3 gaming's renaissance? The Asia Tech podcast is joined by Yaul, a co-founder and CEO of WeGG, to help us unpack all of that and more. Chin, thank you so much for coming to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here and very excited about the topics that we're going to talk about today.
So am I. Okay, let's just jump right into this. How would you characterize the evolution of gaming from 2021 to today in the Web3 world? And have there been specific inflection points that you think have been particularly important?
It's a great question. I think everyone's pretty much aware of how play to earn kind of came about, right? You had 2017 with CryptoKitties, and then the Axie boom came about in 2021. I think that was a key inflection point for play to earn, right? Because you then had YGG, which then came out with this scholarship model where you lent assets to gamers around the world to play these games in return for a percentage of their in-game earnings, right? And that was a revolutionary model which was pioneered by certain guilds first in the Philippines, and then later on pushed to the mainstream by YGG themselves. And then we obviously are a part of the YGG family. So that's how this whole thing came about. This boom and, A16Z and all these big VCs starting to invest in this space. And there was really a lot of appetite and hunger and bullishness to this particular space. And I think in 2021, it evolved from being, just games to actually, wait a minute, I can actually earn some money from playing games, which is every child's dream, right? I think growing up, I was like, your parents are like, why are you wasting time playing video games? What? In 2021, you could be like, wait a minute, I actually could make some money. And, when we started this scholarship program in Southeast Asia, we were actually able to change the lives of thousands of people. And what I mean by that is, we were started with the premise to expand the portal to the Metaverse for Southeast Asia. And we invested in various different gaming assets, NFT assets in particular, and distributed them to different people in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia. And from that, they were able to actually earn a stable income during the COVID period, which, everyone knows economies are shut down, people couldn't go outside. So people stuck at home playing games, and they're actually able to put food on their table. So you have people in the remote villages of Indonesia who are able to earn $300-400 US dollar equivalent in a month, when the average income in Indonesia is about 200 US, right? So really life-changing impact to these people, putting food on their table. And at our peak, we had about 50,000 different players across Southeast Asia playing for us. We distributed about $1 million in in-game token income to these individuals and really changed their lives. So I think that was the inflection point, was the Axie boom.
Yeah, I remember.
And then, everyone's talking about Axie, right? I think it was worth 50 billion at one point, something crazy.
Yeah. I remember just watching this and just saying, I'm not a gamer per se. Like, I understand the gaming market and I pay a lot of attention to it. Like I said, I did a lot of recordings back then about this. But I just saw these valuations and I was like, wow. What happened? Like, it definitely boomed. You said you had 50,000 users. You distributed $1 million in tokens. What happened?
Man, I could go on about this for so long.
Give me a little bit. Give me a little bit of juice.
Like the challenges of something which is purely based on, there was no product market fit yet for Web3 gaming. It was kind of speculation and hype, right? As with most things in investments these days. But I think because crypto gaming is so correlated with crypto prices, right? So you had 2021 was when everything was going up, and then 2022 happened, and then things started to go down. So there was a period of time where we were able to do this for about 4 or 5 months, and then after 5 months, bang, Luna happened, and then 3 hours, yeah, 3 hours Capital happened, and then FTX happened in November, and then people were scared. People were scared, and because you're playing for money rather than playing for enjoyment, this is when the human psyche and the way that you actually approach this changes. So people started to obviously treat it as an investment. So they started to reduce their holdings, exit the games, sell the tokens, and then you saw crypto games crash. And then Axie since then has been able to pick itself up, back up, but not to the extent and not to the height that it was at before. So yeah, I think it's purely based on the speculative nature. A lot of these people go into this ecosystem purely to make a living, and I think when games become that, that's where you start to see cracks forming in the business model.
Yeah, in a way, it almost reminds me of the Gartner hype cycle, right? Like it's pretty. This is pretty traditional analysis type of stuff, right? You have it go all the way up, the trough of disenchantment, I think, and then it just slowly kind of recovers, and then it actually turns into like a real business. Is that something you think is happening right now?
I think right now gaming is having a very tough time in Web3. I mean, you can look at across the markets, right? I think in general, Bitcoin, Ethereum, AI tokens, real world assets, stable coins, these things are doing really well.
Yeah, they're on fire right
even
now.
Yeah, even dexes. But I think gaming, because you've seen the cycle this year. Everyone was very bullish in the beginning of the year. So were we. We were positioned well. We wanted to expand aggressively in Southeast Asia, but we just didn't see that the potential didn't really come to fruition. What you had is the stigma of Web3 gaming is still very in the minds of gamers in general. So the mainstream haven't come into the to the space, and then you also have game studios shutting down left, right, center. You have like 200 plus game studios, Web3 gaming studios, which have shut down over the past 4 or 5 months, which is crazy. And because these games were actually relying on tokens to fund their operational expenses, you can see the issue. You have the token prices go down 90%, and then they're not able to offload into the market to fund their operations, and then they die. And when these guys aren't really necessarily targeting and making revenue from like the Web2 games are, this is where the issue comes in.
So maybe you can do this and differentiate for me, right, and for some of the audience as well. What distinguishes a Web3 game from a Web2 game per se, even if some of the Web2 games even include some blockchain stuff in them? What's the real differentiation?
So I think like you can have fully on-chain games, which there are a few. Gigaverse being the main leading example right now, shining example. They've done exponentially well for a team their size. I think they have like 4 or 5 people, and did over $5-6 million in revenue over the past 5 months, which is incredible. Insane for even just Web2 indie game standards, right? That game sits fully on chain, so within smart contracts and everything. So it's all on like Ethereum and sits on that layer, right? Then you have Web3 games which still have a Web2 component. What that means is the assets and some of the game code still sits on centralized servers. So if the game shuts down, then the assets go with it. And then so you have examples right now where games have raised tens of millions, $20 million, but because of the way that they're currently structured, they still use centralized servers to hold all their assets. But they have the blockchain elements that allow the trading of the assets. This is where the complications arise, because when the game studio shuts down, the promise of true digital ownership just goes away, because you have this asset which sits on the blockchain, but nothing can be done with it unless another developer comes in and says, all right, let's develop another game which allows you to use this asset interoperably with our game. So, that's the main difference. Is like one, the Web3 games aren't fully on chain, and then you have fully on chain games which are on chain, sit on smart contracts, have the game logic, etc.
You just triggered something in my head, and I wanna ask this, and this may just be my ignorance, but just work with me on this. If I'm a are you familiar with American baseball at all?
I am not. I'm a football fan, but
Okay.
I
Oh,
can, I can try my best. Yeah,
okay, but an American football fan or just a soccer fan, a global football fan?
yeah. Global football fan,
Perfect.
soccer. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, so if I play for Man United, right? Let's say I have my own cleats and my own gloves and my own shin pads and stuff like that, right? If I get traded to Barcelona, and even if Man United shuts down, like all my assets are still good for me. I can still take them somewhere else, and they can't stop me from using them because they're not branded. They're covered up, right? So I pull my socks up above them. Now I'm wearing the Barca socks. Nobody cares. Will we ever get to a point where like, because a lot of the assets in gaming, right? And I'm going to make stuff up, right? Like a sword or some kind of gun or something. If it's really interoperable, is there a way to then make it so that it's really interoperable and I can take it with me anywhere, even if the game itself shuts down? Because you see what I mean? Because in the real world, that's definitely possible. I was gonna say baseball. Like I'm the first baseman, I take my glove with me. No one's gonna be like, you can't use that glove because the team shut down. I'm just curious if that's a thought that people have, or if it's even a possibility.
So don't quote me on this because I may be wrong. I'm not a technical founder, but from what my understanding is, you can actually build interoperability to a lot of these assets. But the thing is, you have to have these game studios which are willing to incorporate these NFTs into their game, right? So, for example, you have a game called Pixels, which you know is able to recognize certain NFTs from like the blue chip NFT community, like Pudgies and etc. So you can build that kind of interoperability into the game, but you have to support it. So the game developers actually have to build it themselves. I don't know currently any example of an NFT that's you can just build it once and then it's able to be transferred across different gaming ecosystems. That is the dream, right? Everyone's seen Ready. As a gamer, I think most gamers have seen Ready Player One. The dream is to be able to have all these different IPs live in some sort of metaverse and play all together. But obviously, there's copyright issues. It's way more complicated
For
than
sure.
the dream, right? So
Right, right.
I think there's like different layers that you have to get to in order to get there.
So I wasn't thinking about this before we started recording because, frankly, I haven't thought about the metaverse in a long time. But what is the relationship between Web3 gaming and the metaverse? And did kind of the hype around the metaverse impact the Web3 gaming as well, or vice versa, if you know what I mean?
I think it was the opposite way, actually. It was the hype around the metaverse actually impacted the Web2 guys, right? So, like, the reason why Meta is called Meta is
Yeah,
because
I remember.
Mark Zuckerberg wanted to do something in the metaverse, right? Well, like the Oculus Rift and everything, but that never came. Like, I don't think the barrier to entry is too high. People having to put on VR goggles and like play in this metaverse, like I think it was too far ahead of its time. Even now, like one of our close partners, Sandbox, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners know about. Sandbox is like kind of
Animoca Brands, yeah.
Minecraft, yeah, Animoca Brands, and they've recently had to restructure. They've been working with various different IPs over the past few years as well, and that's also a metaverse kind of concept. You buy
Yeah.
land, you kind of build in that world, and then you can have different activations, marketing activations within that world. I think it's difficult to actually grow those numbers. We've been actually helping to build those numbers up in Indonesia and let people learn about how to create kind of environments and 3D models within Sandbox. So I think the metaverse itself actually didn't fulfill its potential just yet. I think the gaming industry right now is going through a very difficult time in general, not just in the Web3 side, but the Web2 side. Obviously, there's EA recently just had the news of the leverage buyout, $55 million, the biggest leverage buyout in corporate history,
$55
by
billion.
billion
Yeah,
billion dollars
I saw that.
by a Saudi consortium.
Yeah. Those guys have way too much money, don't they?
So much money. So much money. They're like pushing. I mean, they need to reinvest the oil profit somewhere else, right? So I think the strategy of focusing on esports and gaming is one that is for the long term. But I think gaming is not going to go away. But what you see right now is like fragmentation of different demographics. The growth isn't as exponential as before because the mobile gaming market has matured, and then you have a boom in indie games, which is actually great for smaller developers. But the AAA games, those publishers and developers which are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into games, they're the ones which are taking on the greatest financial risk. And you have complications and dynamics like the AI development tools, which are cutting away headcount, and it's just very, very complicated. In general, though, I think the metaverse has potential, but it hasn't fulfilled it. So far, Sandbox has done as good of a job as it has right now, considering the Web3 gaming environment. But I think the potential is just so much more. Even Mark Zuckerberg is backtracking on the metaverse kind of stuff and focusing on AI stuff right now.
Right. I mean, look, from a software perspective, building, and I'm going to put it in air quotes, building the metaverse, it's not that much more difficult than building any kind of software product. But to deliver that product via hardware to people en masse today is just really, really hard because creating the hardware to do it is just so expensive. Just so expensive. And again, part of the reason why is because of economies of scale. If you can't get tons of people to use it, then you can't lower the price of it. And you know the way this works. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But let's think about Web3 as like a larger universe as well, right? And I think we were talking about this a little bit offline. Why do you still think that Web3 gaming remains one of the most compelling use cases for these technologies versus other domains like decentralized finance? We're going to have tons of conversations with other people about DeFi, but I'm seeing, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint on this, to all the people to whom I speak about DeFi, they see it just merging into traditional finance. I don't know if you're familiar with all this terminology too, but DeFi is just merging to TradFi, yeah? It's just becoming traditional finance, just using some certain tech. Why do you think gaming is still like a really gigantic and compelling use case for this? And maybe which parts of Web3 you think are the most important?
I think gaming is very compelling still till this day because there's actually product market fit. And what I mean by that is you have people who have been buying skins and characters in games for the past, 10, 20 years, right?
Yeah, even in Web2 games, yeah?
Even in Web2 games. So like now the biggest games, Fortnite is one of them, Roblox, all these top Web2 games right now, people are buying skins for them. A lot of the business models around games are actually centered around buying skins. League of Legends is a game which is free to play, right? But in order to get the skin and to play the character that you want, you have to pay for it. So think about it. The blockchain allows for you to identify true digital ownership, right? The same way that NFTs do and real world assets, like you can attribute the ownership of this particular asset in the digital world to this particular player or this particular owner. And blockchain allows you to do that because of the way it's transparent, it's verifiable. All these elements and features of the blockchain allow you to verify. The only issue right now, I think, with gaming and blockchain, I think, is the token side, the speculation side. So the asset side, there is definitely a very compelling use case to use it. I think the only issue is that these games haven't been built properly that people want to play them. Unfortunately, no one's leaving their current gaming platforms and their current games to play these different Web3 games, right? It's not attractive enough as a sort of new innovation to attract people to come. And now what you have is, what makes it worse is Fortnite themselves recently created a creator program.
I was going to ask you about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, they allow you to sell assets now, which is like you create the assets, you can sell them digitally, which is the concept and the foundation of what Web3 is built upon.
So you said you weren't a technical founder, but I'm just going to give you some information and see what you think about it anyway. I'm not that technical anyway, but when Microsoft rewrote Windows NT, which is a little bit before your time, they rewrote it with a Unix kernel. So before that, it wasn't based on Unix. It was based on their own proprietary systems, yeah? But when they rewrote it, it changed the things that you could do with it because Unix was more universally accepted, and then other things could get written into it. You may not know this either, but Mac OS X was also written on a Unix kernel. So which meant that the interoperability between those two things just became way easier. Anyway, I was curious if you thought, and it was a lot of work to do that, right? Because Windows still had to look like Windows, play like Windows, and still had to work with all the apps that were out there. So it was hard and it was long to do. But do you think a game like Roblox or a game like Fortnite, which dominates anyway, will at some point like rewrite their entire stack, maybe slowly but surely, to be like a Web3 native game? Because now that it seems like they're experimenting with like you can buy and sell this stuff, but there's none of the immutable blockchain stuff built in per se. Do you think that's going to happen? And if it does, do you think that is a watershed event and that will make other people do the same thing and make Web3 gaming actually more prevalent?
I think yes. If they were to do something like that, it will be a game changer. I think everyone right now, there's a lot of people I talk to, a lot of founders, asking the question like, is GTA 6 going to launch on the blockchain, right? I don't think they will, and the reason why I don't think they will is because they already make enough money already. They are going to be the fastest selling or the highest grossing entertainment IP in the next decade, for example. So I don't think that they actually need to. They know that if you incorporate any sort of blockchain element into the game itself, there's going to be pushback from the community. You've seen that with because people don't like the blockchain. Gamers, I'm saying, gamers don't like the blockchain. I'm talking about general gamers here. I'm not talking about like Web3 gamers. Web3 gamers are a very specific niche of the actual gamer market. It's actually the Web3 gamer market is actually tiny. Probably only like 15 million players across the world compared to like billions, right? So you're talking a very small subset of people actually understand the Web3 side. So the gamers themselves who operate in the Web 2 space, they don't like the blockchain, they don't like the NFTs, they don't like any of this stuff. And the reason why is because of all the bad media and the bad press um, about scams, FTX, and they think it's a monetary kind of greedy kind of.
This is interesting though, right? It's a really good point. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about it that way, but this is really interesting. Remember you said like when you were a kid, your mom and dad were like, what are you doing being a gamer? Like even that had bad connotations, but that's moved, right? And to be fair, and I was thinking about this even when I was a kid. If like my buddy went to the Air Force Academy, okay, in the United States, so he flew planes, but he was also really into games. And he told me when he went to get tested for the Air Force Academy that they tested his gaming ability because they wanted to understand his eye-hand coordination and how good he was at this thing. And I think that was one of the seminal changes in how gaming was perceived. Do you think we need another generation or whatever to say like, because now if I see a guy who's gaming, I'm not thinking, well, he's wasting his time. I'm thinking, wow, that's really skillful and there are big tournaments and all this other stuff. Is that going to change in the Web3 space as well, as we get further away from FTX, we get further away from some of these events where people think, oh, that's a scam, or the regulations change around it, or stable coins just become, part of the regular economy, that as that changes, that the general gaming community will think, okay, this is now okay. Like Kim.com is not in charge kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. And I think when you stop marketing a game as being blockchain first, and it's just a game, it's a game first, and you let the technology kind of sit in the background. Like no one's asking when you buy a product, no one's asking like, who the manufacturer is or like, what the foundation infrastructure is, right? The blockchain is an infrastructure layer. I see it as something which should be kind of silent.
Yeah, it's a layer one thing. Just build that layer one thing for me, and I don't really care. Don't brand it for me, right? Yeah.
Just you can let the blockchain do the transactions, the marketplace, everything, right? But don't put it in your face. I think the premise of blockchain kind of gaming was democratizing gaming, but what you saw in 2021 was these game NFTs costing thousands of dollars, and that's not democratizing gaming.
No, it's not.
So, yeah, it's not. You're actually excluding more people. You're actually making this sort of exclusive, right? So I think there's a lot of lessons that need to be learned on the blockchain side in order to make the game more important, and then having the blockchain layer sit in the background. And also, I think like Off the Grid, which is another game which has come out recently by Gunzilla on PS5 and Xbox Series X and PC, they've gone the right way, but even then they faced backlash. So they actually been very discreet about mentioning anything to do with blockchain on their website or their description, but they allow you to use the blockchain if you want to. So if you want to trade your assets, you can mint it onto the blockchain and you can trade. But people have, the gamers are incredibly well researched, right? So they'll research, they'll look into the descriptions, and they'll be like, oh, there's the blockchain word, and the Reddit forums are going crazy, and it's the same thing. Like all these Japanese game developers, Square Enix, Bandai Namco, Sega, they're all exploring the blockchain. Ubisoft, they're exploring the blockchain, but none of the projects have actually done well because there's just backlash. People don't like it. Yeah, so I think the approach needs to change.
So are there other aspects of human behavior you think that, and like community building, that you think can help this change? Or we talked a little bit about this. I used to say, if I tried to explain to my mom that like her mail client in the internet was using like TCP IP protocol, she would never even like log on because it didn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Because that was just plumbing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just said like, just log on to AOL and do this thing and put my address here and send me a mail. And it was like magic. And I think once it becomes like that, right? And there was no competing, there were, but I mean, it didn't really matter. There was no competing back-end software at the time, right? And I think you're right. If it fades into the background, this is where it's going to become most effective, as long as people can do the things they want to do. And I think maybe, I don't know how long a generation is, but I don't think it's like a human generation. Maybe there's a gaming generation. But I think as soon as that transitions, right, people that have been digitally native and don't care about like the back end plumbing, do you think that's going to help this change as well?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what's also going to help it change is game developers themselves are actually building really useful, innovative tools right now to counteract this problem. I think the main issue right now with Web3 gaming is also the speculation, right? So you have a lot of bots as well. Same with on X, right? You have tons of bots that are just farming posts and all this stuff, and then it's going to get even crazier with AI agents. Same with gaming, right? Right now, you have a lot of bots which are actually playing the games.
I was going to ask you, is that really happening?
Yeah. There's bots that farm the game, play the game to get income, like the in-game tokens from these rewards, and then just dump them on the open market. And then you have the token price just keep on going down and down and down. And then players who've bought the assets or the tokens for a certain price, they're like, what the hell? You just screwed me over. Like, I'm playing a game. I don't want to be losing
right.
my life savings.
That's not why I'm here, kind of thing. I'm here mostly for fun, but if I can earn a little bit of money on the side, that's great. Can I ask you this, though? We talk a lot about in the decentralized finance world, like all this new regulations coming out, the Genius Act and all these things. Like people are paying really close attention to this because they want to make it part of a more stable environment, right? So that the tools and the technology can get used. But I hadn't thought about AI agents, right? So agentic AI playing games, earning tokens, and dumping them onto the market because they don't need the income. But like, and I didn't anticipate talking about this today, but shouldn't there be, here's the way I look at it. I honestly think that the online world should mirror the offline world for identity. In other words, I would never let a bot go into the drive-thru and order 70,000 pizzas just to muck around with Pizza Hut. Do you know what I mean? And then stand on the corner and sell 70,000 pizzas for a penny when Pizza Hut's trying to sell them for $10.99. It just doesn't make any sense. And there's no real reason for it. Do you think that at some point the gaming industry, whether it's Web 2 or Web 3, is going to have to get together and say, you need some kind of real digital identity, right? To be able, like a self-sovereign digital identity to be able to play the game so that it's not ruined by the bot?
I think that's a really interesting question. Like when it comes to identity, KYC, these types of topics are very, very controversial. You have anything to do with digital ID and KYC, people are like, whoa, it's my privacy, right? Don't touch my privacy. Like the UK right now, where I'm born and raised, Keir Starmer's kind of proposes digital identity. There's huge backlash. 1 million people have signed a petition against it. And then you start going into this dystopian type of controlling world where you have to prove you're a human. But I think, there must be some sort of elements of that. Yeah, balance. And maybe you use like ZK Sync, or like ZK rollups
Yep.
to basically verify whether you actually are, but they don't keep the information, right? They just do the verification, and then it's a yes or no, and
Right. They
then
know that I'm real, but they don't know who I am. Like, there's a
is
way to
it
do
is
this mathematically. Sorry, go ahead.
yes, yeah, exactly. I think that's a solution. But I think actually making KYC, like, it's going to be very hard because, I mean, this is off on a tangent, but in the
Not
UK
really.
as well, like they've made it compulsory to do like KYC for like anything over 18, right? So you have to, I think, in order to access certain sites, you have to prove that you're that age
Online.
um, online.
Interesting.
So this is a new regulation which has come out, I think, this year, and again, there's huge backlash, a drop in the number of users for certain websites, which I won't name. But I think when you start doing these checks and balances, verifying whether you're human or not, it becomes quite scary. But I think with the way that AI agents is going to become so part of human life, and people are going to be curating AI agents left, right, center, there's going to be a point where gamers and game studios will be like, yeah, maybe we should put some checks and balances in. At the same time, a lot of these AI agents, I think what's scary is in the future, maybe you don't even know you're playing against an AI agent, or you're playing with an AI,
Right. So
right?
gambling sites have been doing this forever, right? If I want to play online poker, I log in. It says the guy's name is Bob. I'm playing against Bob, and Bob just seems to always win because he can remember stuff that I could never remember because he's not human, right? So he has math on his side, or he's got a database on his side that I simply don't have. It's like it's bad enough that the odds aren't in my favor. I mean, poker, the odds are kind of even, but still, I want to make another point, and then I want to make a slight prediction and see what you think about it. If you want to buy a car anywhere in the world, well, most places in the world, you need a license. You can't just rock up to a dealership and just go, I want to buy 3 cars. Like, do you have a driver's license? You say no. You're like, well, you can't have one. You just can't have it. And everybody's happy having a license. Like, nobody complains about this because they want the car. I think one of two things are going to happen. We're going to get this really dystopian future where like humans just like back out of the digital world because they're much more interested in interacting with other humans, whether it's on a game or face to face. And that the companies then that understand that build this sort of human to human interface are going to be the ones that really succeed, because the ones where it's just like craziness and bot driven, people are just going to be like, I'm not going into that party because I don't know who's there, kind of thing. What do you think?
I think you're right. Have you heard of the dead internet theory, where the internet's actually just filled with random AI agent crap like slush? So I think when you have a proliferation of AI agents in the future, that's a possibility, and people would go back to the physical, being together in the same place, and there's going to be value add to these experiences, which is why I think certain game companies which put let's say co-op gaming, couch co-op, or like party games, where you actually interact with each other like in a physical space, those could do very well, right? But I think it's who knows what's going to happen in the gaming space. But I think the key point that I want to reiterate here is that there are changes happening right now in Web3 gaming. One example which I can give is Gabriel Layden's Limit Break. So Gabriel Layden raised, I think, $100 million for Limit Break, which is a Web3 gaming entertainment IP. And he was giving out NFTs for free. And if you're giving out NFTs for free, people feel like, okay, wait, this is actually mine. I own this. It's free, but I can actually have the incentive to actually use it and build upon it, invest in it. Similar to how, like, if you have something which is yours versus renting, people treat it differently, right? You're going to invest more time, take better care of it, rather than just, oh, whatever, I can rent it, I can just give it back, right? Another thing that he's doing, Limit Break, is they're creating this thing called ERC20C, I think, app tokens, which means it's programmable tokens. So what that means right now, you have the issue where the tokens are being dumped and farmed by bots, whales, exchanges, etc., which collapses the token, right? App tokens actually mean that you can program specific rules for that token to be used. So, for example, you must hit level 50 in order to use this token, or you can trade this token. So not only does that ensure that this gamer actually has put in the time and effort to play this game to level 50, but it also prevents, volatility in the market, ensures that there's some sort of stability, and that you can actually program certain rules which the developer wants, like the behaviors that developer wants as well. Same thing with the NFT side. Like if they think that this NFT is worth this much money, you can program this NFT to say, okay, I'm only going to make one weapon, one skin of this weapon, and it can't be sold for less than $20,000.
Whatever it is.
That's the price. Anything below that, it's not going to move. But if you pay more than this, it can move. So I think like the creative ways that Limit Break are coming up with these solutions, and Token Master is kind of the game engine which they're kind of allowing game developers to build all these rules into these tokens. I think is very interesting.
So do I. And this is the incentive structure, I think, that at least needs to be experimented with so you can make sure that the gamers themselves are actually people and are abiding by the rules. Again, just like in the real world, right? We're like, if there's a red light, you can't just drive your car through with impunity. All right, there have to be rules. Can I ask you this too? Because I kind of mentioned this in the intro. What is it about Southeast Asia, which has been described as a hotbed for gaming, right? But are there specific things about what's going on here? Are there demographic things, cultural things, or other things that make it such fertile ground for gaming and for Web3 gaming in particular?
Southeast Asia is definitely a hotbed for Web3 gaming. I mean, Axie came from Vietnam. YGG came from Philippines. But I think the key traits which make Southeast Asia such a hotbed is, I think there's various factors. One is that it's a very young population, very young demographic. Second of all, high mobile phone penetration rate. I think it's over 99%. Everyone has a mobile phone, whether it's Android or some people have multiple phones, right? The internet penetration rate is also quite high. And then you have, a very digitally savvy population, which they're using apps like Grab, and they have like e-wallets already. Like it's very familiar with them. And the gaming culture is so prevalent across Southeast Asia that it makes it easier for these guys to experiment with new things. Whereas I think the Western gamers themselves are like very fixated and locked into the network externalities of like, playing on PlayStation or PC, etc. But like the Southeast Asian guys, they're more willing to experiment. They're more willing to try new things. And I think Indonesia itself is the biggest market in Southeast Asia, 270 million people in Indonesia. So, and that's it's the biggest gaming market in Southeast Asia. So that's why we're there. That's why, my co-founder is from there, Irene. She's
I know Irene
vice minister. Yeah. She's been on the show.
Yep, twice.
Yeah, twice. Yeah. Vice minister of creative economy right now in
Awesome.
Indonesia. So I'm very proud of her. But I think there's a lot of potential there. Obviously, there's political issues right now, which I won't speak about. But in terms of the gaming culture, the love for gaming, it's prevalent everywhere. People on the bus, people like Grab drivers, they're all playing games. Everyone's playing games. It's permeated culture.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like I'm not in the 18 to 25 demo, if that's not obvious to anybody watching or listening to this. I don't know if I like the way you laughed at that. I'm kidding. But I'm shocked sometimes how digital my life is. I really am. Like I don't have a physical wallet. I mean, I do, but I never take it out of the house. Like I don't even know why I have it anymore. I bought it 20 years ago and it just like sits in a case somewhere. But I never leave the house without my phone, ever. I pay for dinner with my phone. I pay for my groceries with my phone. I pay for my motorcycle taxi with my phone, so Grab. I pay for the MRT with my phone. I pay for the sub, like all this kind of stuff. It's so digital that if like it went away, I don't know what I would do. right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that's me. So I'm just imagining people that are in that 18 to 25 demo that have been digitally native their entire lives. That's a big deal, particularly for a region has over 1 billion people in it.
One thing which I also forgot to mention is that majority of these people actually, I think 60% of them are actually unbanked. 60 to
Yeah, yeah,
70%
yeah.
of these people are unbanked. So that means they don't have a bank account, which is
Not in the
insane,
traditional
right?
sense of the word, right? Like they have money
Yeah,
somewhere, but they don't have it in, like, I'm not going to name a bank, but in like some big bank that you've heard of, kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. But what crypto does with a phone and an internet, you can create a wallet, right? And you can then transact very easily. So the adoption rate is also high in Southeast Asia. Indonesia, I think, is the top three. Vietnam consistently ranks amongst the top five. Thailand's up there as well. Philippines, obviously. So all these countries are very, like, all these variables, all these features have come together to harmonize for Web3 growth, right? So you see that people are very interested in trading and earning, etc. I think the only kind of challenge is how do you prevent the population going down that spiral of speculation, trading, and placing big bets because it's gambling. A lot of these countries actually ban gambling, like Indonesia, Malaysia. Even though there are some online portals where you can still play these games, but it is a very big issue which needs to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more thing, then I'm going to let you go. In the medium term, right, as all this kind of stuff that we've been talking about plays itself out, what does success look like for you guys at WeGG?
I think for WeG right now, we've shown that Indonesia, Southeast Asia in particular, is a great consumer market. All the games want to come into this market. What we want to do is we want to propel Southeast Asia, be a pioneer in Southeast Asia, to showcase actually there's good games that are being built from Southeast Asia. So we are working on initiatives to actually export some of these select games from Indonesia to the world, giving them a world stage and a platform to actually showcase Indonesian and Southeast Asian artistry and innovation. And also, I think it's very interesting. We ourselves, if people actually don't know, we're a asset deployer. So similar to Animoca, we're very focused in the gaming space, but we also invest in different assets. So the digital asset treasury kind of model is very interesting to us. We have a very robust treasury. I think there's a very big opportunity for us to continue building and investing in different things in the market, and to realize our vision to make games, gamers like beyond just playing, right? We want to make gaming something which you do and you contribute towards and you get rewarded for it, and empower these people in Southeast Asia with digital ownership. That's the ultimate goal, is to make this dream come true. I think we've done well in order to get our name out in Southeast Asia, but there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more adoption that needs to be happen, a lot more education, and to give opportunities for our community to keep growing with us and learning about Web3.
Awesome. Chin Yaul, co-founder and CEO of WeGG, thank you so much for joining the Asia Tech podcast. You were an incredible guest. Really incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.